What's up, guys? Josh Snyder.
Justin Russell here with Russell Marine Products.
We're going to go over some frequently asked questions of the new LVS34 LiveScope Plus. We've been getting emails and phone calls in as this thing's rolling out, so we thought we could cover a few of the heavy hitters that we've been seeing and the sales guys have been hearing and see what we can do it on video for you.
All right, guys, so question number one on our frequently asked questions topic is, what capabilities or what units is the LVS34 capable with? Now, we've already gone over this with one of the other videos here, but it's a lot. It's a very broad spectrum of stuff.
It is, yeah. You know, the two main families, Echo Map, GPS Map within Garmin that we kind of talk about a lot, with the big difference in the LVS32 did absolutely work with specifically the Plus units, so the EchoMap Plus units. No longer the case with the LiveScope Plus. I know this is confusing some people because it's the same box. It's that GLS 10 box, but software is different and it has changed and you're just not going to get what you need there. Same thing goes on the GPS map side with the 7600 series. Again, the LiveScope LVS32 did work there, but no longer with the LVS34. Same box, new software, not going to work on those older guys anymore.
Basically, they're just not being supported anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Older hardware versus newer hardware, but for the most part, everybody that's already had a unit for a while, like your 1022, 1222s, your 106s, 102s, 126s, 122s, the EchoMap UHD family, if you will, the stuff that runs at UHD transducers, you're going to be just fine with this stuff here. So it's a very good spectrum. I'm really glad to see them going back on some of the older stuff and showcasing that. We did a side-by-side comparison. It's impressive seeing it out on the water. There are some differences there.
Absolutely.
So, all right, question number two, guys. Does the LVS34 work in muddy water or very stained, heavily silted conditions? So you guys on river systems, like us on El Dorado Lake, where we do a lot of our filming, are generally muddy type fisheries. Now, yes, they do work exceptionally well at that, mind you. But you may see some more clutter. So there's a lot of guys out there right now, they're like, oh my gosh, my screen looks really cluttered. And I'm just saying, from what we've seen, a lot of those guys are in the south right now. Well, we've got a lot of pollen in the air right now. And we're seeing it on the waters in Texas, Georgia, Alabama. Again, all those southern states, we're getting a lot of pollen in the water. So guys for sight fishing are seeing it on the surface. That's also in the water.
Yeah.
So that will aid in the cluttering of your screen on that as well too. So although that screen is cluttered, you're still seeing target separation. You're still seeing tree branches. You're still seeing fish in the trees themselves. So it absolutely does. This is not a limited to super crystal clear water. It helps, but...
Right. I mean, and that's like, you know, the difference between like stained and silted water, right? You know, stained water, we're seeing like if it's tannins off the leaves, things like that, where it's like, you know, dark tea, kind of coffee. That's way different than what we're seeing with the debris that's causing the water clarity issues. Stained water, it's excellent. I mean, as far as the sonar is concerned, it's no different than clear water because it's not picking up debris. In this like chocolate milk water, silty, pollen, things like that. That's when you start seeing the differences. From what we're seeing on our home water that's very muddy, chocolate milk, low visibility all the time from debris, not from stain. We saw a big improvement on the 34, and I think it's going to be an excellent tool in muddy water.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Question number three. Let's check it out.
Does the LVS34 work in shallow water applications? So I'm going to assume, just from our comparison videos that we did in the past, I'm going to call shallow water shallower than 15 feet. So 0 to 15 feet. Does it work well on that? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Now, I'm going to say that there's like a two-part answer to this, actually. During certain times of year, and we're getting to be on the spawn right now, I really like perspective mode in that shallow water. I want to see the creek channels. I want to see the bends in the creek channel. I want to see shallow water stumps, tree branches. I want to see fish on there in those shallow water applications. Again, in perspective mode specifically for myself, bass fishing. But no, crappie going to the bank. We've got guys using in forward mode in super shallow water, especially right now with what's going on.
3 feet. I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, if you've got enough room for your trolling motor to be clearing, or your pull mount to be clearing, whatever, and have just some distance that clears that, so it's not just literally shooting straight at the bottom, you're good to go. Like, it'll work quite shallow, quite shallow.
A big thing that I'll say too that I like to see, especially in shallow water applications, whether in forward mode or perspective mode, isn't so much of, am I looking at a fish and throwing directly at a fish? Yeah, that's absolutely helpful, but I want to see a disturbance of something moving, okay? And is that throwing from my right side of my screen to my left if I'm in perspective, or if I'm looking directly at it on a regular screen, did it move out of my cone angle? Can I follow that fish and see what's going on? That leads me to a lot more of what I've talked about in the past, and you and I have talked about, fish behavior sometimes is equally important as to watching what's going on with a fish, how it reacts and the fish behavior, more than seeing a fish swim up and bite your lure or your minnow or whatever you're fishing with that day.
Go from precise targeting to a fish, which it does absolutely work for, to start watching fish and their movements and then start making predictive cast. You know, stuff that would take a long time to learn that pattern.
Yes.
You get to visually see the pattern and see what they're working and see the lead that you need to put on them and where you need to present the bait to them and so on and so forth. And it works great for that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
So question number 4, does it work for multiple species? You know, early on days of original LiveScope was crappie scope, right? And then guys started using it for bass to high levels of success. And expanding it, we had guys using it for walleye and down mode. Obviously, ice fishing, you know, was a huge game changer.
Catfishing is a big thing.
Yeah.
And maybe not for reasons that you initially think. So our catfishing guys that we rig their boats and talk to, they love LiveScope for finding bait. You know, so kind of caught me off guard because I really thought like, well, how the hell are you going to use LiveScope for catfishing? You know, especially with cut baits and stuff like that. But I didn't realize sourcing bait is a real huge deal on catfishing. Yeah. So being able to throw a cast net after you're finding the bait fish, where are they moving to, seeing a lot of those catfish spawn in very shallow water like bass. We're seeing a lot of guys now using them for spoonbill fishing down in Oklahoma.
Targeting
snagging. Yeah, that was insane. Tommy Vaughn, thanks for letting us onto that type of fishing down there. That's really unusual. Guys are going after them and finding fish up shallow when they're going, bow fishing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, almost had a brain fart there. I couldn't think about it.
Mode.
Yeah, they're using perspective mode before they can actually push some of those fish to the bank before they're turning on lights and stuff to be able to identify fish. So, no, it's... Man.
Specific to the 34, you know, that's something that you can do on older new LiveScope, most of those things. With the 34, the target separation is great. If you're starting to coal under the water, right? Yeah. So you're picking out the big ones. Your target separation is going to step up and help with that. Also, from what we saw in testing, you get better range out of this. Yeah. So we've even discussed something we obviously don't have here in Kansas, but guys hunting for Lakers and things like that, you can really stretch this thing out further than you could with the 32. And we think the greater depths, things where LiveScope may not have been, original LiveScope may not have been super useful in great depths, you know, 100 feet, 120 feet. We think the 34 is absolutely going to work for that.
Sure.
You know,
absolutely.
Absolutely going to work for that. Yeah, so I think it's going to work for a wide variety of species. Even take what original LiveScope did and then add a handful onto that when you start looking at its range and its overall increased target separation.
I think as time goes on, we're going to find more uses of how this applies to people, whether that's hunting bait fish or fish to snag. Identifying how big fish is has been a really big deal lately in the past couple of years, I'll say, like with LVS34, as you're saying. But as there's more target separation with LVS34, this just helps with that even more. There's guys doing stuff that I never would have even thought of and utilizing a LiveScope to do, and one of those examples is our local guy, Jim Bybee, very, very good at crappie fishing, was very, very successful before LiveScope, and now that LiveScope's out, even more successful. But he was telling us stories that he will specifically drive his boat over brush piles that he sees fishing to break them up and hunt down the bigger fish. I mean, I would have never thought about that at all. I mean, that's the people that truly are looking for that competitive edge, are trying to figure out how to do that. Where I see a pile of crappie, I just want to go catch every single one.
Well,
you know,
got guys like that. You know, the guys that are with the target separation, they're telling us, it's like, well, if it's not 12 inches, and they know it's wild, they know because they look at them enough. If it's not 12 inches, I pull my jig away from it.
Yeah.
We're just like, okay,
yeah,
sounds good. You
yeah,
know?
love to eat that one.
Another thing with the target separation, a dream of mine that he knows I've had for quite some time, I want to break down mangroves. I want to look for snook. I want to chase stuff like that. So with that increased target separation, we've already seen it on the brush piles here. Looking into mangroves and seeing fish hang out within them and target that, man, I'd love to do that. And, and you guys down in Florida and things like that, I think it would be an absolutely wonderful tool for that.
Absolutely.
Really cool.
Again, as we use this more, as this gets more out there, we're finding more uses of it, where our customer base is growing larger on different stuff. We're seeing a lot more saltwater applications with us. And I mean, not necessarily offshore specifically, but redfish, you know, snook, that stuff, that inshore tarpon, looking around, a grouper around dock pylons and stuff like that.
You guys that like to run flats but don't have your push-pull platforms, if you're on just a standard boat that you can get into the flats, you can use perspective mode to electronically give yourself a closer vantage point to what someone with a push-pull platform has up above the water. So it's pretty wild. You know, fly fishermen, I've talked to a guy in Idaho that's fly fishing on lakes specifically, and instead of having that big standing platform to be able to see out over the water, he's using perspective mode to target fish. It's lots of applications. All right, probably next question.
I was going to say, short
you
answer to
catch
that,
a fish with it?
Anyone,
it'll come.
Anything. Number 5. Does the LiveScope transducer, is it better to have it pole mounted or shaft mounted or mounted to a trolling motor?
Depends. It absolutely depends on what kind of fishing you're doing.
I have my idea of what I prefer.
You go first.
Okay, so I like to do what we call head hunting. So guys like Josh Jones, Patrick Walters, myself, I want it shaft mounted to the trolling motor. I want full boat control. I want to be able to find a singular fish or a small group of fish and be able to hold the boat steady, keep an eye on that, make a cast, fight the wind if necessary, and remount up. And my foot is my directional indicator on where I want that aimed at all times. So I am not trying to fight a trolling motor or have the trolling motor in spot lock operating a pole mount. I want to be able to make a cast and have my foot the extension of my body basically to control everything and see what I'm looking at. I think guys that go crappie fishing a lot, I know you.
See, this would be my difference.
Yes.
So, you know, head hunter, bass fisherman, things like that. I'm a meat hunter, meat fisherman. So I want to go hang out on a school of crappie. I want to go find some catfish that I'm targeting, something like that. I'm going to do a lot more holding still on my boat and looking for fish for the pan. So when I personally want it on a pole.
Yeah.
Because I like holding the boat still and still having the ability to move around, whether it's tied up in trees, whether it's anchor locked, shallow anchored, whatever you want to say, or however you want to use that. Having it on a pole and having that ability to search around, look for jigging spots, look for holes, things like that. That works for my style.
Sure.
And that leads to a lot of tournament crappie fishermen even. You know, I know a lot of them do run on the trolling motor, but when you're hanging out on a school and you're wanting the boat to stay in a fixed position, but still want the ability to look around and use that as a spotlight, you know, we've talked about that in the past. I think the pole becomes a great advantage there. So it's depends on your style.
Yeah, no, two complete differences. Both have a lot of benefits, and there's some cons on each one, of course.
For sure.
I always say start off with the shaft of the trolling motor. It's always easier to add a pole mount versus starting with a pole mount and maybe considering going to the shaft of the trolling motor.
Yeah, those things don't clamp on.
No, for sure.
In your boat
for sure.
Pole, so.
And then here, another caveat to this, we're seeing a lot of guys throw in like a right height turret or like a live scanner. There's tons of them out there, live sonar, whatever it's called. But basically, it's a independently operated apparatus that mounts to your trolling motor. So you can operate it independently of the trolling motor, much like a pole mount, but is either remote control operated or foot pedal operated. And we're seeing a lot of pros now, in some cases, running 2 transducers and 2 setups. One specifically mounted to the trolling motor, and then one specifically mounted to a turret or pole mount system, to where they have the ability of switching between one, you know, looking at one unit on the trolling motor shaft constantly, and then one unit operating independently. We saw it, Edwin Evers at Redcrest actually is running both setups, and there was 2 moments, I think on the first day or the second day, where literally he was using one on 1 minute and then switched over to one the next when he was on spot lock. So
it's a hell of coordination. You got to see me trying to run 1 foot pedal.
and a pull mount.
Yeah, but no, it does work, and there's different applications. It's very much your style. If you're seek and destroy, if you're power efficient, if you're getting out and chasing them, it needs to be on your trolling motor. Being on a pole will drive you nuts.
Nothing beats time on the water, though.
Yeah.
We've seen some frustrations with customers that have swapped from one or the other a few times, and to what I'll say to you guys is truly give it a realistic run, okay? Not a half a day. Truly get out there and try to do it. We've got some dedicated crappie guys here that are very, very good at what they do, and they're very staunch that it has to be shaft mounted at all times. And then we've got some other guys that are equally just as good at crappie fishing that say it has to be pole mounted.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters as long as you understand it, you're comfortable with it, and it works well for your setup. That's the most important thing.
That's it. Yeah.
So, all right, next question. Number 6, does the new LVS34 need to use the black box?
The black box.
Yes.
Yes.
So the main question that we see this on are people going from maybe a UHD model or an Ultra Echo Map unit to like an 86 or 8400 series units. They think they can eliminate the black box. That's not true. You always need, whether it's LVS32 or the newest LVS34 LiveScope Plus, you have to have the black module to be able to operate this
GLS 10.
completely.
That brain system that it does the stitching, it takes care of the work, it does the extra processing. The amazing images we get out of LiveScope and now LiveScope Plus, that's facilitated by having that extra processor.
That's your computer.
Yeah,
that's what's interpreting all this data that's coming in, and it's a lot.
Trying to do it internally within the unit, you just wouldn't see what you're seeing. I mean, and so it does require that right now. You know, people say, well, it's an extra power draw, things like that. And yeah, I mean, it does draw some extra power. As long as you have your good dedicated wiring, it's not going to drag you down that much. And it is absolutely beneficial. So, I mean, we do understand it. We get, oh man, I wish they'd do it without a box. I get that. Humminbird has done it without the box. That's its thing. You know, but to see this, it does need the box, and the box is not harmful, we promise.
Yeah, no, awesome stuff. Number 7, leading into the black box, can I use the same black box GLS 10 from my LVS 32, the older LiveScope system, with the new 34? And yes.
It's the same box.
Yes, you can. Exactly the same. The one caveat to this that I will say, from a sales perspective, if you will, I will get a little salesy in here because this is one of the first things that you and I discussed when we found out about this new system. I personally think it's better to buy a whole new system of LVS34 and sell your used system, or in our case, trade your used system into us, only from the aspect, it does not happen very often, but we've seen a few black boxes go down.
Sure.
So if you spend $1,200, yeah, it is, and it's on a boat, getting wet and getting the snot beat out of it, bouncing up and down in rough water. But my personal preference on this and my stance on this, and you, I think, agree with me on this, if you've had a system for 4 or 5 years now, and you spend the $1199.99 and get the brand new transducer, it's a completely different mounting system than your LVS32. So what are you going to do with your old LVS32 system, or transducer? So you could keep it in the boat as a backup, always, in case you stump bump it, break it.
Sure can.
But you've got to have the tools to change the mount, to have the mount operate to that. It's not as simple as unscrewing one and screwing one in.
No. It's not a transducer swap. It's a full mount swap.
Correct.
So you have to
electrical tape,
undo your wire. It's a thing. It's a
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the more important one is you've got a brain box that is now 4 to 5 years old potentially, or a couple years old, or whatever that may be. And your warranty on the transducer, of course, is good. It's new, you have warranty, but you're out on the box. So now you could be potentially a year down the road, your box goes out. We know now supply chain issues, it's hard just finding a GLS 10 module box itself.
Yeah.
You can buy them with new systems fairly regularly.
And I mean, again, at the time this is made, LVS34 is rolling out right now as we speak, and that very well could be attributed to putting those with the 34 to get it out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the sales thing, like you said, price point. I mean, to go over it, it's like it's the difference between if you buy the transducer by itself, they're $1,200 retail right now, round numbers. If you do a trade program with us, you trade in your entire LVS32 system, get an all-new LVS34 system.
Full warranty on everything.
Full warranty on the new stuff. And yeah, you're talking $1,000 difference there, okay? So to get that extra warranty, yes, you lose out on some of the money. It's not like it's an even trade. It's not like you're saving $200 and getting new stuff because you've already paid for the LiveScope.
Well,
but
and it's easier selling, even if you don't trade it in, if you're just selling it outright to a buddy or a friend or a guy in the club or whatever it may be, it's easier to sell the whole system because we're already seeing guys trying to sell their LVS32 transducers by themselves, and nobody really wants them unless they're dirt cheap.
Right.
And then you're just keeping it as a spare backup for you, or mounting like a perspective and LVS32 in forward mode on your trolling motor.
Right.
But there again, you still need the boxes.
Yeah, you still need two black
So
boxes.
it's just from my perspective and my thought process, more importantly because of the warranty aspect, I think it's better to buy the full system than just upgrading a transducer alone. Now, some of you guys that may be very specific to ice fishing and stuff where you don't have to worry about a lot of maybe condition variables in that, like bouncing up and down in a lake and being rained on constantly because you guys are in ice fishing huts, maybe a transducer option's just no big deal for you. And you know, it's not a big deal to swap everything out if you would have a transducer or module go out and have that stuff. Maybe not a problem for you. But I see for us bass fishing in the rough water conditions we're in, for the extra warranty by having the warranty on the black box, to me it makes more sense buying the full system.
The whole thing.
Absolutely. Question number 8. Is LiveScope better on the 84 and 8600 series of units, the GPS mapping units, right? Specifically the
the 84 and 8600 series, yeah.
We know that yes.
It's a weird yes, right? So the screen is better.
Yes, it's
So
HD type screen
it is.
with
So
better screen resolution as well.
if you're saying, is the transducer better? No. The transducer performs exactly the same as it's performing when it's plugged into an $1,100 9-inch unit or a $6,000 16-inch 8616. The big difference is what you see out of it. I've always used the equation of, man, you're buying this fixed cost of this $1,700 thing. It is $1,700 no matter how you slice it, right? But just like buying a rifle, if you buy a nice rifle, if you want to get the most out of that fixed $1,700, what point of spending extra money, right, to put a scope on it, because it's what you're going to see to use that tool, is the value worth? The 8600 series, 8400 series, visually, they are better.
Yeah.
No argument about that. Their screens are better. The clarity that you get on the LiveScope because of the screen clarity, they're better.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have to spend that on it? No. Is it really, really good with a UHD and an Ultra Echo map? Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we run it on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we run on. When we do the 86, this is a good, ad-lib question here, comments. Why do you run it on the 86? For screen
video
record.
work. Yeah, that's it.
So
that's
it. Good screen record on our personal boats, on our shop boats. We run Echo Map Ultras when we're running Garmin's.
Crappie Killer's got a 93 UHD and a 106.
Yep.
My personal boat's got 126s and 122s on it. And then we've got the rig that we use for filming, again, only because of screen recording to have the best videos that we can provide for you guys. That's the only reason why we have an 86 here.
But they are excellent, and the guys that do run those, we see it, and when you get the screen recording off of it, it's great. And we see the resolution, it's better.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and for you guys out there.
But to equally being said, the side imaging also comes across clear, again, because of the screen resolution.
Yeah, transducer performance is not increased by that unit.
100%.
Screen performance is just better. So will it look better on an 84 and 86 if you spend the money on it? Yep, sure will.
Absolutely. All right, guys, our 9th and final question here are, what are the cone angles on the new LVS34?
Yeah, they are the same as they were on the LVS32. So in forward mode or down mode, they are 20 degrees wide by 135 degrees of span. And perspective mode is a 150 degree span by 20 degrees tall when you're looking at how you're flipping the angles around. Sometimes that's hard for people to kind of wrap their brains around. It's like, what does that mean, that 20 degree angle when you're looking out? Thanks to Pythagorean theorem, we can actually figure out how far the distance is.
How much data we're pulling in, depending on
distance. So you can look at that. It's obviously the further you go out, the wider it becomes. When it's closer, it's more narrow. So on forward mode, if you see things going in and out of screen, because of how it's displayed on the screen, those things are moving laterally and they disappear on what looks like you're looking at the same piece of water.
Right.
And then you know, okay, they've moved out of the cone. So it's just a quick span of did they go left or did they go right? How did they disappear out of there? On perspective, that's obviously a lot easier to tell because you can see the direction they're moving and you can chase them.
Yes.
Like he was talking about earlier with perspective mode, chasing fish. But yeah, exactly the same. 20 degrees wide by 135 forward and down, 150 degrees wide, 20 degrees tall on perspective.
And I think that's important. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We've seen
Yeah.
some different degree angle stuff from some stuff in the past. I think LiveScope, if I'm trying to remember, was like a 40-degree cone, which
huge.
showed a lot of information, but you could actually be farther away. Well, now they've actually dialed it in, and it's 18 degrees, so it's a little bit more defined. You don't see as much, but when you see something in that cone, you're a lot closer to it. You know, a lot of people say, well, is 2 degrees that much of a difference? It can be, yes.
It can be, yeah. I mean, and the 20-degree cone angle, I think is great. Like you said, it keeps it precise enough that if you're trying to cast at a fish, you can absolutely do that, you know, within a reasonable margin of error laterally.
Enough that that fish knows that lure is there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. On perspective, the 20-degree downwards, you just have to take into account distance from your boat and when that's hitting the bottom and when it's on the top. That there are natural blind spots because it's a cone, and you have to keep that in mind. So on the screen, what appears to be devoid of blind spots, you have to remember that physically coming out of that transducer, it takes a minute to cover everything. Again, like the beam of a flashlight, like the beam of a spotlight. It's, you know, things in the periphery are going to be out, and it's just making sure that you find those things. But yeah, that's the cone angles. It's the same as the LVS34.
All right, guys, this wraps up our first frequently asked questions here on LVS34. May end up doing another series of these depending on what questions come up.
See what happens in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, obviously, as more of these get out there and get in more hands, there's probably going to be more questions from people and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm personally really intrigued to see how many people have maybe not had LiveScope in the past, but are intrigued on the new LVS34 that maybe never considered LiveScope in the past or something like that that we're seeing. So I'm excited that it's getting more people involved.
Yeah, live imaging in general sure has come a long way, and I'm glad to start seeing it get mostly more accepted.
Yes,
you know?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a great tool, man. I'm excited to see it.
Absolutely, and that kind of leads me to the one last thing I'll say here. It's nothing more than a tool.
That's right.
So just because you buy it and install it on a boat doesn't guarantee you more fish catches. It's no better than when side imaging first came out. You know, it was revolutionary, right? This is probably had a lot bigger impact on a more wide range of fishing species, for sure. But it doesn't guarantee you stuff. I've equally been as frustrated being out on the water not catching fish.
Yeah, you don't know.
But at least you have the confidence to know you're around them.
You don't know how to swing a hammer, fellas, the nail's still not going to drive.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind that.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Like us below, comment. We got a lot more videos coming out soon. Always like your guys' recommendations. So if you have any, leave some in the comments below for us.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.